Hi kids, I thought I would do something a little different. This is a small book of short little stories called Race Against Death. It was put out in 1984. It's Race Against Death, True Stories of Young Heroes. There's 15 stories in here of boys and girls who did some amazing things when they were scared. And so I thought I'd read some of these. Here's the first one. Peril in Panama. In Panama, it doesn't snow at Christmas time because the Central American tropics stay hot all year long. But when winter storms blow up over the Caribbean Sea, they bring their own brand of bad weather. High winds and huge waves that pound the coast like sledgehammers. On a December afternoon in 1981, three boys went for a walk near the town of Cocosolo, Panama. Cocosolo is a tiny town overlooking the waters of Limon Bay and the mouth of the Panama Canal. Near the town is Fort Randolph, an American military base that was built to defend the canal in case of war. Near Fort Randolph is a long jetty of rock called a breakwater built to shelter Limon Bay from the rolling ocean waves. It was on the breakwater that the three boys decided to take their walk. Two of them, 16-year-old Scott Hudson and his younger brother David, had moved to Panama from Connecticut when their father was assigned to teach at Fort Randolph. They had met their friend, 15-year-old Keenan Coles. That day, they decided that the breakwater was the perfect place to escape the 85-degree heat and to catch a cool breeze off the water. When they got onto the rocks, the boys saw that there were whitecaps on the ocean. You know what whitecaps are? It's where the waves come up high enough that they turn from blue to white at the very top, where they're all rustling like this. That tells you it's pretty windy and strong water. A tropical storm at sea early that morning had stirred up the waters, and although the boys didn't know it, those waves were a sign of things to come, for the storm was heading their way. Four servicemen from the military base were also out on the breakwater that afternoon. As the boys passed them, the men decided to walk along with them. To make sure nothing happened, as one of them later said, it was a good thing they did. 200 yards down the breakwater, two of the GIs, that means government issue, that's just an old term for military guys. Two of the GIs turned back to shore. The rest of them kept going. The boys clambered on the huge blocks of stone, breathing in the cool, salty wind off the ocean. They walked a quarter of a mile, half a mile. As the wind grew stronger, the waves bigger. Hey kids, one of the men shouted over the rising wind. How about turning back now? It's getting a little rough out there. It was getting rough. As the five of them turned back toward the mainland, a huge wave smashed into the breakwater and knocked one of the GIs off the wall and into the sea. He struggled back, cutting his leg badly as he climbed over the rocks. Then the groups continued on toward shore. And then they reached a place where the breakwater had been washed away, a low point on the wall where the rocks dropped down to the water before rising on the other side. On the way out, they had been able to cross this point easily. Coming back, however, they found that the waves had risen to heights of 15 to 20 feet and were crashing in that gap, trying to break through into the bay. If you have never seen a 20-foot wave, try to imagine a solid mass of water as tall as a two-story house. Then imagine it smashing onto a slippery pile of rocks as you try to walk over them. Wow, that sounds scary. They waited until there was a lull in the waves, and then the uninjured GI made his way across the gap, taking the side farthest from the ocean. Kenan Coles tried to cross next, but he chose the side closer to the ocean, where the rocks were easier to walk on, and he chose just the wrong moment. As he reached the bottom of the gorge, three big waves in a row swept in on him from the open sea. Ah, this can't be good. Kennan saw the first wave coming and ducked behind a log as it crashed down on top of him. As he shook himself and gasped for breath, the second wave hit him and knocked him down into a hole between the rocks. Then the third wave hit, pushing him under a big rock and wedging him up into a narrow space on the other side. There he was stuck, battered and completely covered by each breaking wave. Wow, if you've ever been to the ocean or the sea and you've been out on the waves, you know they can have a lot of force and they don't have to be real high. I can't imagine 2-story high waves crashing in. Yikes! Scott, who had started to cross on the other side of the wall, saw instantly what had happened. He made his way over the slippery rocks, grabbed Kennan's hand, and tried to pull him free, but the crack was too small for Kennan to fit through. Then Scott jumped into the water, swam beneath him, and tried to pull his feet back down. Again, no luck. He could barely touch Kennan's toes. Back to Kennan's head he went. "Kennan!" Scott shouted above the crash of the surf. "On the next big wave, I'll push your head, and you go back down and out the other side. Ready?" The wave came. Kennan ducked, Scott pushed, and out Kennan came. But as the huge wave fell back, Scott, caught in the backwash, was sucked out to sea along with his friend. Scott was a star Boy Scout and a good swimmer. Swimming to Kennan, he took him in a life-saving hold around the chest and towed him through the waves back to the rocks of the breakwater. For a minute, the two boys just lay there by the water's edge, panting, exhausted, catching their breaths. Another boy might have stopped at that, but for Scott Hudson, the rescue wasn't over yet. He yelled to the GI who had crossed the gap first to go for help. When he had rested, Scott left Kennan in the care of his brother and went for help himself. He raced back to his house and told his mother to call an ambulance. After finding his father and telling him what had happened, he helped his father change a dead battery in the motorboat, and they both roared off to rescue Kennan, David, and the injured GI from the storm-washed rocks. Kennan suffered a slight shock and some bad cuts and bruises. He had swallowed some seawater. Ugh. He was shivering and tired, but if it hadn't been for Scott Hudson, he would have been dead. For his bravery, Scott received the Boy Scouts' highest heroism award, the Honor Medal for Life-Saving with Crossed Palms. Wow! Was that an exciting story or what? What would you have done in a situation like that? Goodness gracious. Well, that's the first story. We'll read some more in the days ahead. That was Race Against Death. And that was the first story called Peril in Panama. Well, until tomorrow, bye-bye.